All right, Tristan, obviously the biggest story, I believe, of the week, and I think you would agree.
Probably the only one.
The Lions stomp out the Cowboys. I mean, put them to bed. While losing their biggest defensive weapon, I think one of the sack leaders of the year in all of NFL with Hutchinson. That was a weird injury, by the way, like just the way it happened, the way it kind of whipped around. It was one of those freak accidents.
It was awful.
The good thing is I saw a doctor come on and talk about this, that it's one of those situations where in 8 to 10 months, you're going to see him back on the field. So it's not really career ending, it's season ending. He'll be back. He'll be fine. And except, have a few more screws in his leg. But that'll just reinforce the already, robotic nature of Aiden Hutchinson with how good he is. But I want to point out one thing to you. Both of these teams, I know we weren't going to go stat heavy, and this is the only stat I want to throw out about this game. They both had 60, so the Lions had 66 offensive plays, the Cowboys had 65. The Lions had 492 total offensive yards, the Cowboys had 251. So in the same amount of plays, the Lions were able to double that. And I think it's a testament to show how good the rushing game is, because Jared Goff only threw I think a total of 27 times. Dak threw almost double that at 44, so not far off from doubling. But the biggest takeaway from this game is the Cowboys had 5 turnovers. 5 turnovers.
It started right away. That early Dak interception, you just felt like it was going to be one of those games. And it's kind of the typical Cowboys conundrum, only amplified. We've talked about this before. Obviously, Dak Prescott's not Josh Allen, but similar to... I know. Shocking take. Hot take. But
by the way, 0-3 at home. Just want to point that out.
Wild. 0-4 going back to the playoff game as well.
Yeah.
So you've talked about this before with Josh Allen, with Dak Prescott. You said if the team doesn't put so much on his shoulders, he can be good. We've seen Dak be a good quarterback. Obviously, he's going to have the egregious errors from time to time. That is kind of the player he is. But I just can't get over the fact, and I hate to just keep beating a dead horse, the Dallas Cowboys can't run the football. They just can't. And when you can't run the football, obviously I would like to see more carries, but it's not like they just didn't try, but they just absolutely cannot run it. Then they get away from it. Then they're throwing 50 times. Pair that with the fact that their defense couldn't stop anyone. I mean, the Carolina Panthers might put up 30 on the Dallas Cowboys. I know they got the 2 defensive injuries with Micah Parsons, but it's not excusable either way. They're going to a new defensive coordinator this year with Mike Zimmer. I know they're kind of changing their defense. It's not working. It's a really bad situation. I made a lot of dumb predictions this preseason. One of the ones I think might be looking okay is I picked the Cowboys to miss the playoffs. So let me throw that at you. Is there any chance they can turn this around and become a playoff team? Because I didn't think they were preseason. I sure as hell don't think they are right now.
I'm going to go ahead and say no to this, and the reason why is because the other talent in their division. So you have the Commanders that are on a pretty hot streak right now.
Yeah.
And if they continue the way they are and their defense keeps improving, I think this is a team that could win the NFC East.
Absolutely.
I think it's possible. Jaden Daniels could single-handedly do it. And I think that the Eagles are definitely a lesser team than they have been in the past. And then the Giants are one of those just nagging teams that just stay in it somehow, and they have a pretty decent defense, and they're playing with nobody. So I think they're playing better football, the Giants are, than the Cowboys right now, and the Cowboys have a much better roster. Opening up at 0-3 at home is a huge mark against Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones and the whole organization. They haven't done things right. You mentioned the running. It's hard to run the football when you're down by 3 scores, by halftime. So I understand they had 17 carries for, I think, 80-something yards, averaging 3.1 per carry.
The failure to run's not exclusive to this week, though.
No,
I understand your leniency, but this is a thing going back to week 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. But, when you're in a negative game script, you have to throw the ball 40, 50 times.
They kind of compound on each other, right? You can't run the football, so then you get behind, so then you stop running the football, and the problem gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, but you can't have 5 turnovers either.
No, not against Detroit.
And I don't know the exact number, but I'd be willing to bet that the majority of those, 4 out of 5 at least, the Lions capitalized on and scored on. To score 40-something points in an NFL game is a big-time mess-up on defense to the other team, right? It's hard to score that many points in an NFL game.
Ryan, Detroit was putting their offensive lineman at wide receiver. I mean, they were straight mocking the Cowboys at one point. Mocking them.
So to answer your question, circle back to that. No, I don't think so. I don't think that the Cowboys have any chance of even making a wild card playoff run this year. I think we're going to see some big changes. I think somebody asked Jerry Jones if Mike McCarthy was going to be fired or if that was even in the talks. And he's like, no, why would it be? Or something stupid like that. It's like, I'll tell you why it should be. It's because he's 0-3 at home, has a great roster, and can't manage to put together a football team that can play competitive football against any team in the NFL. And when you do play competitive, you wind up screwing it up and losing it at the last minute. So I think that this Cowboys organization is, from top down, has done things completely bass-ackwards, and they need to reevaluate. Dowdle can be a starting running back, but they don't utilize them enough with 17 carries. Like, they just give up too early. They get behind, like you said. It's a catch-22. You can't do one without the other. You have to be balanced. That's exactly what the Lions did on Sunday, and that's why they won the game so big.
The only thing I'll push back on you on is I don't think it's a great roster. I think that's where the majority of the problems stem from. I think when we talked about it all offseason, it was the point of contingency. Jerry Jones saying we're all in, and apparently he has a different definition for what all in means. He must not be a poker player. I figured he would be with all that money. They didn't do anything. Now, they couldn't because of the way they were hampered by the Dak contract, but then they signed him right before week 1 started. It just feels like typical Cowboys, like lost without a paddle downstream.
Yeah, and I know they have 2 big injuries, right, with Lawrence and Micah Parsons.
Right.
But that doesn't excuse it because you got teams like the Giants coming out here and they're stopping Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Burrow.
Everyone has injuries. The Chiefs lost all of their offensive weapons and they're undefeated. You know, we're to the point where you can have some leeway with the whole injury thing, but it's not an excuse. It's week 6 of the NFL season. Everybody's got injuries. You can't let another NFL team hang 40 on you and not be competitive.
Well, they still managed to do it. So out with McCarthy, in with, I don't know who else.
Maybe Belichick. Last question. How much of this, because I'm conflicted at this myself, how much of this season do you put at McCarthy's feet? Because I just don't know if it's the majority of it. But at the same time, you can't just let it go. We know McCarthy's a good coach, but how do you run it back after this year? Whether it's his fault or not.
If you're in management in general and your team's performing poorly, it reflects back on you. You are the sum of your record. And that's where Mike McCarthy finds himself. Whether it's his fault or not, he's going to take the blame. He's going to take the fall for it. I don't know, man. I think Jerry Jones has a lot to do with it. I think Mike McCarthy has something to do with it. And then I also think that Dak just isn't playing good football this year.
But we know that Jerry and Dak aren't going anywhere, so that leaves one.
Oh, Mikey Mike. I think he's going to be out at the end of the season if it doesn't improve. Like, if they don't finish, Lord have mercy, if they have a losing record by the end of this year, which is very plausible at this point.
Oh, yes.
Then I think Mike McCarthy is for sure out. If they're not, I could even see him being out with a winning record if he's only 1 or 2 over 500. So I think that there's a good chance we see a new head coach at Dallas next year.
Just to prove that point, we talked about from the beginning of this season how it felt like a lame duck year for Mike McCarthy. So we were talking before the season kicked off that this felt like a lame duck year for McCarthy. So then you peek into week 6 and they look like this. Why would it be any different now?
Yeah, I can't find a reason. I can't find a reason when you turn the ball over 5 times, when you don't run the ball, when you have a defense that is falling apart and letting every team score, upwards of 30 or more points on you every single week. So I don't know what the fix is. I don't know if it comes this year, but I do know that the Cowboys have got to improve if they want to put their hat in the ring for the playoffs this coming up year.